Topic 4-2, Parallel Lines Investigation. A little bit of a continuation of topic 4.1. Again, you can access a computer website, Math is Fun. If you want to put in what I've shown here in geometry, parallel lines, it'll kind of show you a few more examples from this topic. Can be referenced in Holt, Chapter 3, Section 2, page 155 and 169 from the textbook. Okay, let's start with you're going to use the third page because it says use figures 1, trace angle 1, and compare it to the following. All right, oops, I'm just going to actually cover all that up. Slide this down. You're going to be using these comparisons from figures 1 and 2. Okay, if you're going to compare angle 1 with angle 5, the types of angle pairs it is, if they're congruent or not, and supplement or not. To do this, ask your teacher for a piece of patty paper. Take the patty paper and put it on top of figure 1 and trace it. So what I mean by that is just trace this angle and then compare it by sliding it down. They're asking us to compare it to angle 5. Well, as you can see it on that patty paper, I'll draw it thicker, is that it's actually congruent to angle 1. Slide it up. Angle 1 and angle 5 are actually a congruent pair. So they're a corresponding angle. Yes, they are congruent, but no, they're not supplements. Let's talk a minute about supplement. Supplements are two angles added together that equal 180 degrees. If you want to make note on yours, they would have to equal 180. That's a supplement. Okay, let's compare angles 1 and 4. If you trace 1, which we've already done, and compare it to angle 4, you're going to take your paper and turn it around and see that it matches up with angle 4. So these are not corresponding, though. They're across from each other. So they're vertical angles. They are congruent. Do they equal 180? No. All right, let's compare 1 and 3. You've traced 1. It's not equal to angle 3, but can it form a line? Let's draw, I'll use a different color. Angle 3. If that's angle 1, and I'll just try to share this line. This is angle 3. They share that common ray. If you'll look at it separately, it forms a line. So that creates a 180 degree supplement. So they are supplement. They're adjacent to the linear pair. They're not congruent to each other, but yes, they are equal to 180 degrees. Okay, look at angles 1 and 8. I've already traced that one, so let's try that again. Trace angle 1, and then compare it with 8. Again, you're going to turn your paper around and see that it actually matches up. So 1 and 8 are congruent to each other. If you look closely, that one's on the outside, this one's on the outside. They cross over the transversal of this line, so they are alternate exterior angles. So they are congruent to each other, and they're not supplement to each other. Okay, one more. 1 and 7. Oops, I think I just showed it to you. We already traced 1. And then 7, we know it's an acute angle, so we can actually do the same thing we did here. If that one was 1, 3 and 7 are actually corresponding, so if the blue line is 1 and the 7 line is orange, they actually create a supplement of 180 degrees. If you can have a linear pair make a straight line, they are supplement to each other. So 1 and 7, again look closely, they did not cross the transversal, this line right here, but they do have, they stay on the same side. Where are they? On the outside or the inside? This would be the exterior, this is the interior. So 1 and 7 are on the exterior. They're not congruent, same side exterior, but they are supplementary. So make sure you know, if you want to make sure you understand linear pair and same side exterior being supplementary, draw in an example of a linear pair that this whole distance that makes up this straight line is 180 degrees. And by drawing it in, we were able to do that for the same side exterior as well. Okay, I think we're still using this figure, so I'm going to carry that down on top of what we just did and slide this up. This time we're going to use the same figure, figure 1, and we're going to trace number 3. If you want to, you can get a new piece of patty paper or just keep using the one you've got. I'll try to keep these others out of the way. So we're going to trace angle 3. Try to keep it still. There's angle 3 on my patty paper. So I've traced angle 3, and we're going to compare that with angle 5. So again, slide it down. If you want to turn around to see if they're congruent, you can line it up either way, on transversal or the parallel line, but you'll notice that that is not parallel, not congruent. But if angle 3 is here, and we slide it down, notice that that one's going to, use a green pen this time, make a line. So if you can draw a line out of those pairs of angles, you've created 180 degrees. So these are a linear pair. They're on the 3 and 5. Oh, they're not a linear pair. I'm sorry. They are actually both on the inside, on the same side. 3 and 5 do create a linear pair, but they are actually same side interior. They're not congruent, but they are supplement, because forming them together they make a linear pair. Okay, angle 3 with 6. Again, we'll trace 3. And then we'll turn it around to match up with 6. They are congruent. They're the exact same. I think tracing this and actually visualizing what's happening with these angles is a good thing. So make sure you trace them. But look at 3 and 6. It's inside these two parallel lines, but they're opposite each other on the transversal. So they're adjacent, alternate interior. They are congruent, which means they're not supplement. The only way that they can be congruent and supplement would be to be right angles. Okay, let's just fill in the blanks here. Which type of angle pairs were congruent? Congruency meaning exactly measuring the same. The corresponding one angles, the vertical angles, the alternate interior and alternate exterior angles. Which type of angles were a pair of supplement? Supplement, make note again, you can put it on your notes, that it has to be equal to 180 degrees. Linear pairs, same side exterior and same side interior. Okay, let's go on to page 2. Covering up all the answer choices to start with. This time we're going to be looking at, so I'm going to slide this down, figure 2. It's on the last page. So if we're looking at figure 2, sorry there's a lot of moving papers around, you're looking at two lines that don't appear to be parallel, but until we measure the angles, we can't make assumptions that they're not. However, these lines look as if they're the same equal distance from each other, and these lines look as if they'll carry out, they would actually eventually cross each other. So we're looking at comparing number 1. You might want to get a new piece of patty paper. So we're going to trace angle 1. You might ask your teacher for some colored pencils. Pens sometimes don't work as well on the patty paper. The reason they call these patty papers, they put them between hamburgers. Restaurants, we use these. Okay, we're going to compare this first one with angle 5. So 1 and 5 are definitely not equal to each other. If you can notice, this 5 angle goes this way. It's a little bit further in than angle 1. So they're different, but notice their relationship. This one is along this line and this one is along this line. Even though they're not parallel lines, they're still considered corresponding. Are they congruent? No. Were they supplement to each other? No. They were not supplements of one another. Okay, numbers 1 with 4. Well, again, if any two lines cross, you can say that the sides opposite are the same and equal, and there's a special name for that. 1 and 4 are actually equal to each other, showing that with the patty paper. Those are called vertical. They are congruent, but they're not necessarily supplement. Unless we got out a protractor and measured that they were both 90-degree angles, that wouldn't work. Compare angle 1 and 3. Look closely. Turning this back around. You got angle 1 and your angle 3 lines up to make this straight line right here. So if this creates a linear pair, which is the type of angle that it is, they would actually be supplement because they're going to be 180 degrees. Linear pair, they're not congruent, but they are supplement. Number 1 with 8. Let's just look at these. We've already determined that these are not congruent, although we could measure it with the patty paper. But notice again, they're on the outside and not the inside. The outside, and they jumped over the transversal. Alternate exterior angles. They are not congruent, and they're not necessarily supplement either. Okay, last one is 1 with 7. Notice if this is my transversal, they're definitely not congruent to each other. We can actually measure it if you want to, but they're also on the outside without jumping over the transversal, considering same side exterior. Not congruent, not supplement. All right, one more. I'm going to put this now on top of that. Pause it if you need to keep writing. but I'm going to try to fit this in the screen. We're still looking at figure 2, and we're going to trace 3 and compare it with all the others. So angle 3 is here, and if you're going to compare it with 5, kind of crooked, we're going to slide it down to here. We'll notice that angle 3 was traced in green, and angle 5 is quite a bit bigger. Angle 3 appears to be an acute angle, and angle 5 definitely an obtuse angle. So they're not congruent to each other. But where do they stand in this figure? They do stand both on the inside. So these are considered same side interior, but they're not congruent and they're not supplement to one another. What about angle 6? Instead of tracing, let's just look at these. 3 with 6. They're on the inside, not the outside. If they're on the inside, they're interior, but notice the transversal is this line here, and they jump over. 3 is over here, 6 is over here. So 5 and 4 are alternate interior, and 3 and 6 are alternate interior. So alternate interior, not congruent, not supplement. Which type of angle pairs were congruent? Well, every single pair of angles that were vertical would have been congruent in figure 2. 1 and 4 are congruent. 3 and 2 are congruent. 5 and 8 are vertical angles congruent, and 7 and 6 are congruent. So those are all the vertical angles in figure 2 would be congruent angles, congruent pairs. The type of angles with supplements are always going to be your linear pairs. Again, write 180 degrees to denote supplementary angles. Okay, the last conclusion, and we'll just fill this in, I'll leave this page on, is in figure 1 and 2, what is different about it? Well, figure 1, the lines are cut by a transversal or parallel. We determined by measuring with our patty paper that this line and this line are parallel. We learned earlier that to show parallel lines, you denote it with arrows. We can't put those on figure 2 because they're not parallel. Which angle pairs are congruent in both figures? Well, the only ones that were congruent in both would be vertical angles. Which pairs were supplementary in both? Those that made linear pairs. Remembering our patty paper, the ones that you were able to, I'll just throw out all the examples we had, the ones that we were able to draw lines once we added them together. A linear pair made up of 2 angles that form a 180 degree, a straight angle. So if you can make a straight angle out of 2 angles, they're a linear pair. When were the other angle pairs congruent or supplementary? Well, when you had parallel lines cut by a transversal was the time when the other angle pairs were congruent, being corresponding, that would be the example of corresponding, 1 and 8 and 2 and 7, alternate exterior angles, 3 and 6, 4 and 5, alternate interior angles, same side interior, 3 and 5, 4 and 6, same side exterior, 1 and 7, 2 and 8. Again, there's extra examples on mathisfun.com that you can kind of go over some of these concepts in detail. And that concludes 4-2.